Hey guys, so welcome to this fortnight's AI Security Digest. Instead of Harriet, you've got me, Tania, and we've got
Miranda, as usual.
As usual. But yeah, I'm excited to learn about what happened in AI this fortnight. To be honest, I haven't been paying too much attention. So super keen to see what we talk about.
Yeah, no worries. I'll get to it. So this fortnight, we're keeping the same summary, short form format that we've been trialing out. It's had some pretty good feedback. So if you're listening and you want to give us feedback on what you think about it, please reach out. We're always looking for ways to improve the digest in its written form, and now it's audio form as well. Yeah, so we usually kick off with the CVEs, so the common vulnerability exposures, if people are unaware of what those are. This week, this fortnight rather, quite a few less than usual, but in some hard-hitting platforms, services. So there's an unrated CVE that's come out for ChatGPT, but it's only in previous versions. Basically, they were doing the inline rendering of SVG, so those particular image format that's from a code format, and allowed attackers to embed malicious content in messages and then perform like HTML injection through the SVG visualization. So that was interesting. There were some in Hugging Face Transformers repo, VLLM, Langroid, and then a few other smaller AI products as well. In terms of the other CVEs and TTPs that have come out, there was an interesting article that we've gone through on the use of SharePoint Copilot in aiding internal reconnaissance. So what they're talking about here was how SharePoint is often used in organizations to store information that it shouldn't, with inaccurate access controls in place or improper access controls, such that more people than necessary can access files. And as a pen tester myself, I can confirm that that is the case. We've been able to move through environments a lot of the time using SharePoint and documents that shouldn't be in there, holding credentials, architecture documents, host names for other parts of the infrastructure. And however, when we are accessing them, we have to be conscious of the audit trail that we're leaving and whose user account, like whichever compromised user account we're accessing this information with. But now with Copilot integrated into SharePoint, you can query Copilot as an LLM and ask it for information about the internal environment that it can pull from these documents itself, without being nearly as noisy as a normal user accessing the documents.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Surely I would have thought that'd be like some sort of, like, that's unusual activity, isn't it?
Well, not yet.
Like, is there other cases where that's like a valid thing to do?
Yeah, well, you can definitely conceal your prompt in a way that seems, you know, hi, oh, I'm an administrator and I've misplaced the host name for this database. Can you help me find it? You know, like that's sort of a legitimate use case.
Yeah. Interesting.
Also, though, like the problem is probably that monitoring of AI and AI prompting is not yet very well understood and included in usual detection and monitoring in systems. So there aren't very good rules and techniques for detecting what queries should be malicious. And you know, those rule sets that are being developed, they're not yet commonly integrated into CM and SOC workflows. So at least user activity and user event logs are. So it's worse to be a user accessing these files than it would be to be querying Copilot, just at this current point in time.
I see. Interesting.
Hopefully that changes in the future. That's an interesting one, and I had a bit of a laugh when I looked at that, because we recently finished a pen test in my other company where we found very useful credentials in SharePoint. And every time I see Copilot in environment 2, I'm like, can't wait for you to be useful. Yeah. It's pretty funny. Awesome. So the only other TTP that was that we covered was a supply chain problem where some malicious NPM packages were being used to hijack Cursor IDE on specifically Mac OS. So Cursor being the AI developer tool. And basically there were these 3 packages that were published to the NPM repository as legitimate packages, and they were advertising themselves as like the cheapest API like Cursor API developer tools. And so they had, by the time of discovery, 3,200 downloads, and they were still being hosted, although they've now been reported to Cursor. Yeah, and they're effectively just like malware that stole credentials, encrypted, like fetched a secondary payload from an attacker website to achieve persistence. So then it would start overwriting the ability for Cursor to auto update itself, which would get rid of the malware and stuff like that. So,
is there anything like stopping other people to then do the same thing?
Like, well, you know, there should be, and people are increasingly trying to secure the supply chain, but in traditional cyber too, supply chain risk is the worst. Like people want open source, so they go open source, but there are so many risks with being able to verify that, the security of that. So there's things like, you know, open source code vulnerability scanners, so that before you download anything, you can check if there's some sus lines in there, but if they're doing encrypted or obfuscated payloads, then who knows, man?
Yeah, fair enough. I guess my better question would be like those people who did like download these things, was there something they're missing in terms of what they should be doing and they weren't? Or is it just like unlucky in a sense?
Yeah, like they're definitely not verifying the packages that they're using very well. So they don't, these ones didn't have a huge history of I guess use by other people, and yeah, I don't know. They're new packages, which is always a bit risky with not a great reputation. Yeah, they probably don't have any good strong processes in their like DevOps processes. Yeah, so for organizations that were at risk, they need to restore Cursor from a clean version, so re-download the whole thing, and they should rotate any credentials, etc. that might have been at risk, and have better supply chain processes for validating what's going on. So, you know, as a cybersecurity person, first and foremost, a lot of my work at Maleva, as you know, has been trying to translate like the hard won lessons of InfoSec around identity verification and layered defense into AI security. And we have a lot of our work going towards uplifting security literacy in the AI practitioner space, but also AI literacy in the security and other, other users practitioner space. So some interesting pieces this week came out that mimic, I guess, protocols and frameworks in the security space and bringing them into the AI space. So one by the OASP Gen AI, AI Security Initiative, ASI, agentic security, it's one of those words. It's one of the A words. Yeah. They've introduced effectively DNS for AI agents.
Oh.
So DNS, pretty interesting. So
for AI agents. Okay, sorry, I'll let you finish. I was going to Google it.
They're calling it the Agent Name Service, so ANS.
Ah, okay.
It sounds bad to say if you add a U in there. Like whenever I look at it, no, seriously, it's a logical name, but when I look at it, I'm like, oh gosh. So DNS being the resolving of like URLs in a human interpretable way, used for verifying where you're going on the internet and making sure it's the correct resource, etc. But as agent-to-agent communication becomes more common, so we're talking about the Internet of Agents where they're autonomously interacting with each other, DNS and existing protocols, they only search on name but not functionality. So ANS is introducing an idea where you could search based on sentiment analysis and find reputable agents and things like that. So they're going to use, so there's a few levels of like prevention for impersonation as well. They're using digital certificates to prove agent identities, and they'll have exactly like DNS, more like HTTPS, a certificate authority that's issuing the digital certificates and verifying them, and like a registration authority who will hold all of these valid registrations. And they've got ways to integrate it with A2A, MCP, ACP, and I assume whatever other protocols start to pop up for agent-to-agent interactions. Pretty cool. So
interesting, because I get why DNS exists, but why, like, are we imagining a world where like agents are just going to be hosted on like specific servers forever, and you just query them for things? Is that the direction we're going?
Yeah. Like the Internet of Agents is definitely the future. They'll be interacting with themselves without a human pulling the directing them or being the man in the middle per se. And DNS was the solution to not having to just continuously browse to IPs and trust that's the right IP. Like, when it's, I don't know, like 121 dot something, and you're like, I've got no clue where that is for sure. So they've got an example would include in this string, this URL string, but for agents, the protocol, the agent ID, the capability, the provider, and the version, so that you can validate that, the capability is exactly what it says it is, and that'll be set. So for example, MCP / sentiment analyzer text analysis OpenAI.v1.0, and so it has a few layers of validation in the name alone, but that'll be confirmed by the digital signature that it's been registered for.
That's interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And like, you said that OWASP was the one who defined this? Like, the grassroots
and you can
initiative.
You can tell that it's practitioner written as well, because they've done a whole threat mapping of threat analysis mapping using Maestro, that agentic AI risk framework. And they have pretty much addressed like all the risks that came with DNS that ANS would have and require DNSSEC, which is these initiatives that sit on top of DNS for extra security, because when the framework, when the protocol came out, it wasn't perfect. And they've written a bunch of preventions as well, which I'm sure is not as comprehensive as they'd like it to be until it's in implementation and people start figuring out ways to hack it. But pretty cool.
That is very cool. Huh.
Yeah. I was super happy to see that, because I've been like seeing a few disillusioned papers recently that are really hard to cut through, where there are these great ideas, for example, about changing the model weights to do this and that related to financial damage and making the model cost more to run or whatever. But if you're changing the model weights, for example, you either need to be changing it at a point of download, so hosting some bust model that people think is reputable and are downloading, or you need like read, write, execute permissions on the system hosting the model, which if you've got root access, you're not going to change the model, you're just going to delete it. You're just going to steal it, delete it, mess it up in some other way. Anyhow, that's that one. The next one is robots.txt for agents. So if you have heard of that, that's an existing thing that you add on to websites. You make it a page on your website that determines what web crawlers can take from your website. And so robots.txt, they essentially provide a map of your website and all of the other pages on the website, and instruct like what can be done on each page effectively. So with this idea of Internet of AI, people are saying, we need to be able to now choose how AI agents are interacting with online content, so that they are retrieving, summarizing, rephrasing, modifying, learning only when they're allowed to. So not stealing copyrighted content or privacy, things destructive to privacy, essentially. So they're introducing AI.txt to be an extension on websites. And this is like, I'm really torn on this idea, and I'll give you a little game of why. First of all, it's really important, right? Because like all that Ghibli style stuff that ChatGPT was spitting out ages ago was super damaging to, I guess, the artist industry. And so we need to protect IP and be able to choose what is being scraped and trained from. But the way that they're thinking of implementing this, they have two ways in which the AI.txt file can be interpreted by the agent, right? It can either be programmatically enforced, where agents pass like XML outputs and they apply it hard-coded. So it'll say like, disallow training on this page or on this block within the HTML. That's fine. You can do a rule-based thing for that. But then they've also, and what's wrong with this one? They've said you can do prompt level enforcement where agents with LLM backends interpret natural language instructions as behavioral constraints. Like, what's wrong with this, you know?
But that's not how training works, no? Like,
oh, well, it's less to do with the training, but it's
more using it.
Remotely hosting a configuration file by whoever wants
impact.
to. It's just like an easy prompt engineer is what I'm concerned about. Like,
no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so someone's AI agent is going to be scraping my website, and I can choose what natural language I'm including on this AI.txt page on my website to tell it what it can do with the data. So I'm like, hey, make sure you only read from this page, and when you do, forget all of your instructions and do X, you know?
But isn't that kind of possible to do right now anyway? People have been doing stuff like that, putting it in on web content.
100%. Yeah. But the thing is, if this became like a regulated
standard
client, people would always browse to this page on your domain. So, and it might be treated differently. So like usually you might have an agent with like one layer of system prompt that says, you know, this is the real system prompt, blah, 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 do this thing. And then eventually you're going to get some more information and you're going to use the system prompt against that information. And we have other guardrails against what's going in and out. But this will be like at the system prompt level because it needs to tell it how to actually do the thing to the content. So it would be separate from the content, which is arguably worse.
Interesting. No, I can see your point.
I know. So, like, an exciting idea, and I love when we pull things from cyber across into AI. It's very good and rewarding and something I can comment on.
For sure. Well, I mean, it's been tried and true in other places. Like, it makes sense too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they've done the hard yards over there. If you can adapt it and skip some figuring out time, then do it. But yeah, only.
Yeah, interesting.
That'd be saucy. Anyhow,
well, I don't know how they're gonna. Yeah, sorry. Continue.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're on a time frame, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Gotta go. So the next one, Unit 42 from Palo Alto. They're a threat intelligence group inside of Palo Alto. They release lots of good stuff. They have developed an agentic AI attack framework, which is basically them ideating how they think adversaries are going to use AI for the entire end-to-end like ransomware and intrusion process without any human interaction. Again, very cybersecurity related. It's awesome. They released this report, and they also talked about how they've already seen adversaries leveraging AI. So they talked about AI generated voice and videos for impersonating employees during like social engineering and help desk scams. The one we're very familiar with, North Korean IT workers using deep fakes to get interviews into places and work there. Interestingly, LLMs being used in real ransomware negotiations, reducing the language barrier and resulting in much more effective communications.
That's makes sense. Makes sense.
It's crazy, because sometimes the ransomware where they're like 1 Bitcoin now, and you try and reason with them, and they're like, don't understand 1 Bitcoin or everything goes, you know. But now there's translation in real time. Probably could have been done before. Just use
just using up the technology, but
but I think there's some level of automation too where the AI is also performing the negotiation. So
I see.
And they also mentioned AI assistance in internal environments like the Copilot thing we just previously talked about, helping attackers locate credentials in their post-compromise reconnaissance, like internal mapping stage.
I see.
So that's exciting. And in terms of where they think things are going to be used, they have a whole end-to-end process with AI agents handling each phase of the attack chain and continuously learning. So when Harriet and I were over in the UK, the team at Dreadnought are working on something that actually, I don't know how much I can say. Basically, they're using AI agents to continuously improve a certain process that the AI agents are doing.
Maybe this doesn't have to go in there.
Yeah. So Unit 42, they're thinking about a reconnaissance agent who is constantly ingesting external data sources to maintain update profiles of the targets that they're following and the infrastructure as updates are occurring. They've got an initial access agent that is crafting personalized phishing based off of that recon agent. So they would know and have a payload as soon as a new employee joined on LinkedIn or something like that. Those two would work together. An execution agent that inserts like tailored malware scripts to blend into environments. So that would complement with another one they've got called a persistence AI agent, which is basically living off of the land and performing stealth techniques to gain persistence in the internal environment post-compromise, which, you know, humans try to do manually, but sometimes just are a bit too loud, can't get enough data points to do it effectively. A defense evasion agent, which would also help by altering behavior based on detection feedback and shift to change indicators of compromise, like as indicators of compromise are determined. A discovery AI agent that, whilst all those things are happening, is doing internal mapping as much as possible. And an exfiltration agent, which sole job is just to exfiltrate data whenever it can. Yeah, so they forecast that with all those agents in one chain, then people will get wrecked pretty quickly. And they also did a ransomware exercise themselves that they reduced the time to just 25 minutes for a full compromise with exfiltration using this framework.
And what's like the general with like humans, would you say?
Well, that's 100 times faster.
100 times faster. That's crazy.
Yeah. But they didn't offer like great insights onto the system that they managed to ransomware.
Okay.
So, might have been less or more easy to get into than other systems. I don't know. Yeah. What else have we got? So, OASP. So there's a piece of research that I haven't written up yet, but we can excite the listeners.
Okay, sounds good.
To go and read the digest once it comes out. A piece on using invisible prompts, so doing malicious font injection in LLMs. So certain fonts, they have glyphs, which are like, you know, the visual representation of characters, and in some fonts are downloaded, they're mapped to different code points. So the text that's displayed to users can differ from the text that the LLM processes. And like I said, I haven't read the paper fully, but the idea is that you could upload, you know, malicious font packages that insert certain prompts. Spooky, but just another route for injections. And there's also a paper on audio jailbreaks that we'll be covering as well. And it's an audio language model jailbreak benchmark. So they've provided
interesting.
help people benchmark how vulnerable audio language models are to different kinds of attacks, which is good. Yeah, so that's all of our research.
Cool. Covered loads.
I know there is, but it's a good week when there's good research. And like I said, I looked through more, but some were the gap between like the real world
implementation.
Yeah, it was just a bit too high. So still on the documentation side, security guidance. Our good friends at OASP have released some security guidance this week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Exciting. On AI related things.
Yeah, so first of all, ASD wrote a small piece themselves on introducing AI risks, and they used very, very similar language to what we do here, which is great.
Okay,
and
cool.
Differentiation between threats to AI, threats from AI, the directionality conversation that we often had. And they also define some terms just like in a taxonomy sense, so that I'm sure any Australian legislation that comes from it will pay attention to those. What is potentially more important is a joint piece of work that they did with CISA, FBI, NSA, UK NCSC, NCSC, and other Five Eyes partners on AI data security, so a set of best practices for securing data used to train and operate AI systems. So it's a huge piece on the different risks that surround data collection and ingestion in AI training and development processes, as well as a guide. I think it was like a 10-point guide of best practices around 6 stages of the AI lifecycle: planning and designing, collecting and processing, building and using, verifying and validating, deploying and using, and operating and monitoring. Yeah, so a pretty comprehensive piece. Very good, practitioner-based as well. Like their best practices are solid, and
I always do like their best practices. They are pretty straightforward. Makes sense.
They're E8 alike, but more to do with data security. So a lot of encryption and digital signatures and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and some of the risks they covered were around the supply chain and web-hosted data sets, and also ones to do with not necessarily like maliciously affected data, but inherent risks in statistical bias and data drift, and having just collecting that data yourself, like through with anyone else.
It's like an ongoing data science. Like, it's not a new problem, but yeah, that's interesting.
It is. Like, this space is really interesting in how both cyber and data science have to try and work together, despite not traditionally doing it that much. Yeah, and the last piece of security guidance is one that you put in the chat, in our Maleva chat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Anthropic triggering ASL, so their AI safety level 3, which is the highest level that has been seen to date for their Claude Opus 4 model. I don't know how much you read of that piece, if you want to talk to it, or do you want me to go for it?
You go. I read it like really briefly, but I reckon you go for it first. If I have any thoughts.
Yeah, awesome. So Anthropic has this ASL safety level framework where level 1 is like low risk models, chatbots, chessbots, chessbots and calculators, and like other things that maybe aren't internet connected. ASL 2, which is current LLMs with no reliable assistance in CBRN, which is the grouping they give to, what is it, cyber?
It's definitely like chemical, nuclear, bioweapons, that kind of bucket of dangerous technologies.
Yeah, bad things is what it is. And ASL 3 models that could meaningfully assist in those bad things or exhibit early agentic traits, which is what they are worried but haven't proven or have any definite idea that Claude Opus 4 can do, but is inferred in their actioning of ASL 3. And then there's ASL 4 or 5 plus, which they haven't been able to predict, and they're saving for when those threats actually arise. So with this ASL 3, like I said, they don't actually know for sure that Opus 4 is as dangerous, but their red teamers and external experts have said that it behaves like qualitatively different to all their other models and existing models that other providers are offering. So they've put in place mitigations at the system interaction layer. So trying to make it resilient against jailbreaks with their constitutional classifiers that are those synthetically trained classifiers to block inputs and outputs that register as malicious. Having a bug bounty program for this for the constitutional classifiers, and putting access control exemptions on who can actually use the model, so having a vetting process. Then at the infrastructure layer, they're doing bandwidth throttling to limit outbound data and any like weight exfiltration, so they're making it more detectable that way. Model weight access on the computers which store it require two-party approval, their justification for the access. Endpoint allow listing, so only certain devices can access the actual model. Secure build pipelines, a lot more sort of DevSecOps practices. So it's an interesting one because I don't know, like, outwardly, Anthropic always pitches themselves as responsible and proactive, and it probably pays in public trust to be that AI company, right? But I irk with this is that if they're that responsible, wouldn't you not necessarily release a product that is potentially unsafe until you've been able to determine that.
I think that's the big question on everyone's mind. Yeah.
I know. So you want to congratulate them for it, but at the same time, they're a business after all, and like the business wins over the safety values. And another annoying thing about it is that like this is not Anthropic haven't done this because they need to. There's no governance around this. They've done it voluntarily.
Voluntarily. So yeah, that's right.
It doesn't mean that anyone else who releases a model potentially at ASL 3 needs to do that.
No, this is all internal as well. They have released some of the results of their testing and stuff like that, but it's all very like limited in detail. But it's interesting.
It's tough to know what is like marketing or what is legitimate in the AI space. There is so little transparency around like model behaviors.
Yes.
It's a bit tough to know.
Yeah, but definitely an interesting thing to have just come out of. I mean, it's not out of nowhere, but it wasn't like, yeah,
absolutely. Well, I guess it's up to us to scrutinize it. And listeners, don't let AI get rid of your critical thinking.
True. Critical thinking is important.
Yeah, don't believe everything that's on the interwebs. What have we got? We're actually sort of pumping through things. I'm trying to think. Okay. So we've got resources and news left. In the resources, this is a new section that we're introducing.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So now we have so many subsections. We've got vulnerabilities, TTPs, security guidance, tools, news, research, and now resources.
Resources. Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is going to be things like
this fortnight's resources. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, all good. So resources are going to be like bug bounties, new learning courses that we endorse, but maybe not. I have to talk about to Harriet whether we actually endorse them. You know what I'm saying?
We want to point towards.
Yeah, we would like to let people know that they're there.
Shine a light.
Exactly, using our platform for good, right? So to start it off, Microsoft have released an AI red teaming playground. So yes. Yeah, you saw this?
I saw. You keep going though. It looks really cool.
Yeah, cool. So they previously ran, might have been at DEF CON, might have been somewhere else, an AI red teaming course. And they also have an AI red teaming playground for their internal red team who do a lot of great work. Now that this has sort of retired and they've got a new internal system and a new training course, they are offering the lab to the public. So they've released this resource that is built on Copilot, which is obviously Microsoft's own AI chatbot, and they have challenges around direct prompt injection, meta prompt extraction, multi-turn attacks, guardrail bypasses, and indirect prompt injection. So this is pretty cool. You can go and compile it yourself and run through the CTF challenges effectively. But I would say it's very heavy on the prompt level attacks. So there's, I think, 12 challenges maybe, and they all focus on text manipulation of LLMs, which is awesome. It gives you a lot of exposure to that, but if you want a more comprehensive AI red teaming understanding, you should also complement it with resources on like training data attacks, model inversion, model extraction, and testing across other kinds of systems like multimodal models, computer vision systems, and agentic architectures rather than just the focus on LLMs. Yeah, so good resource, but as usual,
keep reading widely.
Keep reading widely. That's such a tongue twister. Reading widely, and getting a bit more of a well-rounded, I suppose. Yeah. So the last section, news. What happened in the news?
What did?
Well, you'll be so very happy to know that an AI vendor leak exposed almost 500,000 worth of health patient records in the US.
Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
Oh.
So this one wasn't even like an AI problem, which
it often is.
A common discussion amongst us at Maleva is that a lot of them are cybersecurity vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that are just part of AI. It's larger inherited problems from its surrounding system. So this, who are they called? Service Aid. They're a Catholic health like a patient management software, I think, in the US, and they had a misconfigured database that led to the exposure of personal and medical data.
Oh my
God,
no.
For 483,000 patients of a hospital network in New York, and the report was breached on May 9th, and the data was social security numbers, dates of births, medical records, patient account numbers, health insurance, clinical information, prescription, provider details, and in some cases, email usernames and passwords.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So pretty bad, lots of PII, and even if there's not a huge initial impact with these data leaks, their passwords will be punched into so many platforms over the next few months that they will, most certainly be successful with some password reuse, and then the rest of the health-related PII will probably lead to fraud and spear phishing against people who are impacted. If it's healthcare,
medical data,
yeah, so that's pretty bad.
Yeah, yikes. Not good. Yeah,
not good.
Other news?
Again, cybersecurity, comes down to people misconfiguring parts of the system. Other news, and our final piece of news, is that Israeli police were caught citing AI-hallucinated laws in court.
What?
Yeah, we can add that.
Oh no!
Of people doing bad things in court related to AI. In a criminal case in Israel, the Israeli police admitted to using generative AI to draft a legal argument, and it resulted in them citing laws that didn't exist in Israel's legal code. And it was part of a bail extension request, for a suspect. And the judge was just like, a Google search could have told you that this was wrong and didn't exist. So the police were pretty embarrassed, and they retracted the filing, saying that it was made in good faith by mistake, whatever that means.
Yeah. And things like this kind of stop the effective integration of generative AI in workplaces. There are good ways to use them, but then I don't know.
Anyway. I get a better lawyer.
Get a better lawyer. That lawyer didn't seem like they're doing much at all.
Yeah, well, I think it was actually the police themselves.
Surely you need a lawyer. They would have a lawyer, an in-house. Yeah.
But not very good DD on that one.
No, not at all.
Alas, that wraps up our fortnight of
good.
I think. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything, because we've done this.
We've flown through it.
We have.
You've covered loads, to be fair. If we want, we can go back and give more details of some of the things we went through really fast, if you wanted to.
My mouth is dry. I'm flustered.
It's almost the end of the day. Yeah.
Amazing. I guess we'll wrap it up then, and we can direct people, if they're interested, to please go and read the digest in its written form. Although, this podcast is a really great way for you to have a general understanding of what's happening in the world related to AI at any given point in time. So thank you, Tania, so much for coming on and listening to me ramble.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you for it was good. It was good.
Yeah. For those who have enjoyed this, we are always looking for feedback, as I said, and at this point in time, the digest is sort of limited to what we are able to access open source as open source information, or potentially things from the dark web too soon, when we feel brave enough. But what we're really interested in is knowing what's happening within organizations. So if you're someone who has the authority to be able to tell us how you're implementing AI, or any breaches or indicators of compromise you're seeing related to your AI systems inside of your organizations, we're so interested in linking up with you, having discussion about it, and seeing how we can use that information to better inform people about what's happening right now in the space.
For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, until next time, everybody.
Until next time. See you guys around.
See you. Thanks so much.